know. Yeah, so distributed hydro, and it's important to show the slide because we've actually built a few of these now, so and deployed them. So we're quite far along with our development road. So yeah, I'm Roisin, I'm CEO and co-founder, and I cover business development, sales and marketing. And really what we're setting out to do here, the opportunity that we see is clean energy generation, specifically in the distributed space. And distributed energy is really having a moment right now. It's booming, and rightly so, because the energy landscape needs to change, and everyone's starting to realize that when the grid goes down or when your diesel supply stops, you're in serious trouble. So we're really tapping into the hydro branch of that space. And there's a huge resource there that is not being tapped into. So hydro has really laid the map to show that this is de-risked, the potential is there, and you need the right technology to access it. So we've been very hard at work. We've put an awful lot into our R&D. As I mentioned before, we've deployed a couple of these units. And what we actually realized was we started out as a tidal company. And as we were developing the smaller units to prove out the technology, we realized that there was huge demand for this scale of machine. So it compares really nicely to a diesel generator, which is the current solution being used. It's completely unsustainable and it has to change. And we've really put a lot of work into this product. We've designed it to be really simple, standardized, very affordable, and it's instant. You can literally deploy this in half an hour, take it in and out. It's very easy for operations and maintenance. And we've thought about the full life cycle of the machine as well in terms of its recyclability and the materials that we use. We've 9 granted patents in 7 territories, which cover mainly, this is our main USP. So what makes us different, because there is a lot of companies doing this. And unless you're actually going to put in a dam or major civil infrastructure, your other option is you're working with free flowing water. And what everyone's struggling with is that they don't get enough energy out of that water then. So we are the only company that is actually using this design where we put an intentional obstacle in the middle of the unit. And what that means then is as the water approaches it, it accelerates out and around it. And we have 2 vertical axis turbines either side of that bluff body, which is what we've called it. So the next time you're walking over a bridge, have a look down at a bridge pillar and you will literally see this happening. It's so simple. And if you just say to someone, have you seen a boat? This is what's happening under the water. This is our product. So very standardized. There's a lot of markets and applications. To skim them quickly, remote supply is undoubtedly the biggest one. That's where we solve the biggest need and have the biggest impact. Smart cities is also a really booming space, and it's because of the energy volatility recently. We started out just looking at developing countries, but this has now become a global issue. And canals as well, for their ease of access. They don't have a lot of issues with permitting, marine wildlife. And then to mention as well the utility tidal. So we did originally set out looking at that, and then we pivoted, but it's still definitely part of the product roadmap, and it's something that we are working on in the background. So an example of active projects and traction that we do have a current smart cities project, quite a large one. So it's European wide, involving 32 partners, big players involved. It's a €24 million project. And we literally just today, I had to email my CTO saying, can I say this? We've just gotten planning permission to put 3 units in the middle of a city environment, which is massive. So a big day for us, big milestone. So that's going to be a really incredible project to see that actually happen now. So there was a lot of stakeholder engagement and work involved with that. And then another project is the VATS project. So that was a key deployment that we did last year where we ran the machine for a solid 6 months, and we finally got everything with the remote connectivity, loads of testing on environmental impact. We had a team of PhDs literally with binoculars, underwater cameras, noise systems, proving that the machine has absolutely no negative environmental impact to date, but that's ongoing work.
1 minute warning.
Yep. So obviously, as I mentioned before, the mass market for this is those remote communities and businesses, and that's where we can have the greatest impact. So they're currently relying on diesel generators, or they have no energy at all, and that's really what drives us. We have a great team. Vincent is our CEO, inventor of the technology. He's a project manager at heart with over 30 years experience, and Gary literally moved his whole life to come and join our vision, and he brought with him a wealth of experience in community energy projects. So we have a 2 million raise currently open, and with that, we're going to execute 2 commercial pilot projects, one in the EU, one in the States, grow our team, and execute an extensive marketing and promotion program. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you as well. It sounds very cool. What is the business model?
The business model is through partnerships, so distribution partners, and we're actively talking to a number of partners and hoping to get that secured. So those 2 commercial pilot projects that I mentioned are really, really key. We've gotten a lot of sales contracts, we've gotten a lot of LOIs, but we're being very selective about the 2 pilots that we run with now, and we want industry partners actively as part of those pilots, that then have that market reach and access that we can roll this out on a more global scale. So basically it's B2B, using a network of distribution partners, and the customers that we're actually dealing with are energy project developers, energy utilities tasked with increasing their clean energy generation.
What's the cost of for the capital, and then the actual ROI look like compared to something like solar?
So we've exactly compared it to solar. So basically we're on par with rooftop solar because it's the best thing to compare to. So yeah, we're at the same levelized cost of energy for solar at 1/50th the footprint of space. So 1 12 kilowatt unit, which was the one I was kind of showing you there that was deployed, will output the same amount of power as an 84 kilowatt installation of solar, which, just to put it visually, is 250 panels, 460 watt panels. So that's a huge advantage that we have. And a lot of the inquiries that we get, they don't have the land space, or they've actually already maxed their solar capacity and they still have a big generation gap. So yeah, we're competitive with solar, but we're very competitive with diesel. So we can, like, in certain sites where we can blow diesel out of the water in terms of the costs.
What stage are you at TRL wise?
8. Yay.
It's a good number.
A long road. So yeah, we're at a really exciting phase now. The fun bit for me anyway, definitely, because like I said, my background is commercial. So yeah, it's been a great journey, but to actually see this out in the market having a positive impact is, that's why I'm doing this. And we're right there now. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
Roisin, maybe a silly question, but you're generating power out in the middle of a channel. Is there a cable that connects it back to shore and into the grid, and how does that work relative to if you're in a shallow channel, for example, boats or other things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of the main first question that people ask. So it's, an underwater cable is the easiest way to do it. There's a bit of a perception that that's super complicated, but it's actually not once the distance isn't that far. And the nature of our device is it's very close to where the energy is needed. So yeah, an underwater cable, but the CityxChange project that I showed, we're actually running them overhead through that infrastructure of the existing bridge. And we can also charge batteries. So there's options.
Great, thank you.
If the waterway freezes?
Yeah, we're looking at that. It's not our exact market, to be honest. So we're more looking at the remote communities in, island communities in Indonesia, French Polynesia, those kind of regions. But yeah, I can't actually answer that because we haven't tested that.
What about like monsoon conditions, or if you are dealing with Indonesia, Southeast Asia, you're going to deal with waves and rain?
We've discussed this, because it is a big issue with island communities. Like they get some serious storms that come in, and we talked to one resort that has a number of branches, and they had left like their little shuttle boat that kind of brings supplies on a mooring, and a storm like literally threw it halfway across the island. So they should have brought it in. And like I said, it's the same as a boat. So it can literally just be towed into a safe place. It can be lifted out really, really easily. So that CityxChange project as well, like one thing that we had to work around was there's an annual swim up through the city every year, and it's like a couple of hundred swimmers. And they obviously were concerned about, what's going to happen with the swim. And we just said, just let us know like a few days beforehand, and we can literally just tow them out of the way. So it's really nice that it's flexible and modular for situations like that.
What about the lifetime of the devices, the expected?
Yeah, so 10 years is the expected lifetime, and we're working on 20 years with the ongoing pilots that we have underway.
And given the levelized cost of energy you mentioned, it seems like payback on that would actually be fairly quick, but do you have that projected, and what do you think that is?
Yeah, we've ran that on a couple of like very specific use cases and projects that we've looked at. So it can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. So 1 year if it's an ideal site, ideal resource, and up to 5 years.
I'm also curious, you mentioned that you were looking to use the funding for establishment of a base in the US and also to expand a bit in Europe, but then you talked about actually operating in, it sounded like islands in the South Pacific or Asia or something. So I'm a little curious, where are you actually going to go? You raised this money, got a $2 million raise. What's next? Where do you want to launch?
Yeah, so, and that's a good question because we've been kind of asked about this before about being all over the place, but we're actually not. For the first time, we have a very focused plan. So the 2 pilots, we want one in the EU and one in the US, and they will act as kind of bases basically. And those industry partners which we're talking to can then use those pilots as their case studies, you know, their sales showroom, and they have that international market reach. So the partners that we're speaking to are active in all of those markets. They're big players and they're on the ground in the types of sites that we would hope to deploy these units. So yeah, the pilots in the States and the EU are for that stage that we're at now, you know, where it's easier to get units up and running there. But they're really just acting as kind of a springboard to that bigger market.
What will the actual business model look like once you do have those partners? So what will you guys earn from a kind of revenue perspective?
Yeah, so the pilots again are serving, and this is why they're important and why we're talking to lots of different players to make sure it's the right pilot. But that will actually serve as, again, a case study that make sure that they're the right partners. And if they are, then we can enter into an IP license agreement. But we've learned from past experience in other businesses that going into a license agreement too early, you know, can really damage your business if they're not the right partners.
Oh no, I know that, but I'm saying, will you make like 7% of the project costs, or of what's your license going to roughly look like when these partners are selling your product essentially?
Yeah, we'll get so there's a transactional fee for selling the units based on how many they sell, and then there'd be recurring revenue based on the power produced, which is annual recurring revenue. And then there's obviously parts as well. So that's another recurring revenue model. So the blades in particular, we've put a lot of work into, and we can supply those blades. So replacement parts basically for the servicing, we would also get recurring revenue through them. But that's something that we're thrashing through those kind of commercial contracts with partners. But it's important to us, I suppose, that we do have a recurring revenue stream, you know, that it's not just a one-off fee, the machine, and then that's it. And for ourselves as well, like I mentioned, the remote monitoring. So we do have, we're working on building out an offering with the remote monitoring where we can actually optimize the devices and then offer that as a service as well, that we would have access to the data all the time. So we would actually know, you know, maybe if the performance starts to drop, that we could flag it to them and say, you need to go check the machine, or maybe possibly even move it.
What are some immediate next steps that you guys need to accomplish in order to just finally select those 2 pilots? I mean, it sounds very exciting, but yeah, like what's required to just get it started and going? Yeah,
we need to pick the right partners. That's about the size of it. So, and doing like extensive due diligence on them, because that's really a really key next step. So, Matt, and I know it's a question you like why will you fail? And it really did. Like I struggled with that question because it's a tough question for a founder. But I think like the main reason that we would fail is if we selected the wrong partners, because we're such a small team. And if it's not the right pilot project, it could really hurt us at this stage. So a big part of the raise right now is we're talking to lots of partners, but until you actually go out there, see their facilities, see their plans, you know, meet them in person. And a lot of the ones that we're talking to are, you know, they're all around the world. So part of the resources that we need is to do that.
Have you guys shortlisted what are some of the characteristics or some of the conditions required in this partnership in order for it to qualify as the right partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've a very clear like screening profile of so how we rank them in terms of attractiveness and accessibility. I don't know if any of you have seen that matrix, but it's really good and it works really well. So yeah, we have the experience as well, I suppose, of we've done a good few projects, we've had a few machines in the water, so we've learned. from other experiences. So yeah, we have a very clear idea of what we're looking for and then how to prioritize them.
I don't want to jump too deep into it, but like I guess just one last question about that. What's like the most attractive characteristic or condition that you guys are finding or looking to find that you guys haven't quite yet found from these partners? Like, what's the most attractive thing about them to you guys?
I don't know if it's the right answer for your question, but I suppose belief that they can do it fast enough. Because a lot of them are, you know, same as anyone, like they could be all talk, they're very excited by the opportunity, but are they actually going to move fast enough? Because like we've had some discussions with like much bigger utilities, but we know like from advice, and we've talked to lots of advisors, you know, they move really slow, and we're like a really agile team of 7 that is used to moving really fast and getting things done fast. So I think that kind of the speed that they can do it, you know, that if they say, yeah, we're going to do it and we're going to put all these resources to it, that they will actually do that. I don't know if that exactly answers your question. But...
No, that answers it perfectly, because I'm thinking about, I guess everyone here is like really well connected in the space, and I'm immediately thinking what would be a right partner for you to immediately just partner with and start distributing that energy. And I think there's quite a couple of like startup companies, and I'm sure you guys, like you said, you already have your screening process and your pipeline, but a couple of companies that are really looking to expand on microgrids or looking to provide would be great examples for you. But no, that answers it perfectly. It immediately lets me know who. Thank you.
Great.
Can you not have more than 2 partners and just let them kind of, like, there's a great scene in The Dark Knight, and the Joker's there, and he's basically killing the mafia guys, and there's 2 left, and he takes a pool stick and snaps it in half and says, "We got 1 spot. We're going to have tryouts." Well, let them go out there and keep what they kill.
I love that.
I don't know. I think again we're realistic. I think it's maybe why we've been as successful as we have. Like, we don't take on more than we can. So we're being very focused with the 2 pilots at the moment and trying to line that up. And if more are kind of coming to the table, but again, we're just, you have to stay focused, because otherwise you just get pulled all over the place and we don't have the time.
Okay, maybe I'm now wasting a bit of your time, because I would like to take a step in the future, assuming that you have found the perfect partner and you're ready to deploy. What would you assume to be the biggest challenge there to scale the solution, bring it on the market? Would it be more like on the permit side? Would it be like finding qualified people to make the installation?
The planning and permitting, definitely. So the people to do the installation, a lot of the partners that we're talking to, the reason that we're talking to them is because they already have those skills and those resources on the ground. So they're working in very complementary types of businesses. So the planning and permitting, definitely. So that's why the planning that we just got today is pretty massive for us, because that's like the hardest planning application we could have gone for. Like, it's in the middle of a city centre, tons of recreational use happening on that stretch of water, all types of wildlife, all types of fish. So we purposely did that because we said, if we can get this through, then we can basically go anywhere, as a precedent. So like, that's something with competing devices would be quite restricted, and that they can't deal with wildlife or debris is a massive issue as well for these types of technologies. So yeah, we picked the hardest one. So we're hoping then that's going to act as that'll pave the way, And that's part as well of why we're also looking at the States, because they're the furthest along in terms of other deployments. Like, there has been a lot of deployments in the States, and they actually have a structure around the regulation. Whereas when we went through this, we had to go through the same process as if we were like an offshore megawatt tidal installation. So that's all I'll say.
Will your partners be the ones doing that, or will you guys have to do that?
Our partners, ideally. Yeah, because a lot of them, like, there's tons of them. The distributed space is really booming, and they do all of this. They're project hosts, so they do the planning, and they're already doing the planning for solar or for wind. And it has to be local people, because the regulations completely change depending on what region you're in. So it has to be local people handling that. Like, we couldn't do that. We wouldn't do it well anyway, for sure.
It's interesting. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. I wouldn't rely too much on others if you can, and see how you can have some aces up your sleeve just in case. Certainly some terms in case they don't deliver. Any other questions from the team or from the panelists, guys?
I'm not sure if this was already mentioned, so I'm sorry if it has. Any expected timeline on this, on the next step being executed, like with these partners?
Yeah, like as soon as possible. So that's one thing with what we like about our unit as well, because we do get a bit of pushback saying it's, you know, it's small, it's only a couple of kilowatts. But the other side of that is it's super quick to roll out and time to impact is very short. So, you know, those bigger tidal machines, they have their place too, but they are really capital intensive and they take years to actually happen. And the other pushback that's happening with that is some tidal companies have actually been quite successful with the tech, but the market is not there yet. So we reckon, you know, we educate the market with the smaller units and then build up to the tidal devices again with the revenue from the smaller units. So yeah, did I not answer your question again? Sorry, David.
No worries, no worries. I mean, it is a difficult question. You know, I know it's dependent on when the fundraise happens and when you guys, but I was just wondering if you had like at least some sort of mid-August or something like that.
Frame. Yeah, no, so we have 2 pilots in Europe, like ready to go. So it's literally packaged, like we're giving it to a partner on a silver plate. So that's, you know, that can happen in the next couple of months. And partners really like that because we're coming to them with a very definite offering. The one in the States is not quite so far along. We are talking to various partners, different pilot sites, but we really do need to get that presence in the US to make that happen a bit faster. So it'll be kind of next year for the States.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.